So, good afternoon, everyone. After a lot of hiccup and network issue, now we all get connected. Okay. So, I have already shared the account information in the chat, and I can see Shontu, Ayushman, and Vivek. They are using this account. So, they have already logged in, and rest they are having their own account, maybe paid, maybe unpaid. So, whatever maybe the account is, there is absolutely no issue. Now, my first once again the first activity that we'll be doing, creating a virtual machine. Fine, creating a virtual machine, and that will be the Windows virtual machine. That will be one Windows virtual machine. And after that, once the machine gets created, then I will continue with lot of other things. Okay, so just have a look here. This is the portal, and if you click on Microsoft Azure, you will get a screen something like this, not exactly, but something like this. A screen that's something like this. Beside Microsoft Azure, this is actually referred to as the global search window. In global search window, you just write virtual machine, and it will give you the list of the services where it has found virtual machine. It will give you the list of services where it is finding virtual machine. Click over here, and the management blade for creating the virtual machine or managing the existing virtual machines, that will start. So here we are going to create our first virtual machine. So create and Azure virtual machine. Here the window will get changed, and the window will give me the screen where we'll get the provision to create a new virtual machine. Okay, it will give me the screen where will be provided the option to create a new virtual machine. There are multiple sections available here. Slowly I will cover up all the section, but we'll be starting with the basic section. And basic section generally obtain the configuration setting related from the end user. Fine. Now, first the subscription, you do not have to do anything on the subscription. It will be selected by its own. Then so far the resource group is concerned. Now let me tell you what is resource group. Once again, it's basically some sort of container. It's a kind of container which holds all the resources that gets created as a part of the virtual machine creation, so that if I don't require this virtual machine, instead of deleting them individually one by one, I can simply delete the container, and along with the container, all the components that get created as a part of the virtual machine creation, they will get deleted. Because if you think about a machine, the machine doesn't consist of only processor and memory. It also it also have the NIC, it also have the hard disks and lot many things, and they are separate component, and they have separate charge for every component. So as a whole, a virtual machine is basically a combination of multiple individual Azure component. So for ease of management, they are being placed into single container, and that container is actually referred to as the resource group. You can create your resource group from here, but the shared account doesn't allow you to create any new resource group. Instead, in the drop down list, you will find there is a resource group already been created in the name of something sandbox. Something sandbox. So please select the resource group, and if you are using your own, then click on create new and give a name. Give a name. You can write the same name that I have provided. Now our machine name will be VM01. Now let me tell you, if you use VM01 in the shared machine, then it will create problem, because I can see there are 3 people or maybe 4 people, they are actually sharing. There are 4 persons who are actually sharing this account. So use something which makes the name unique. For example, Ayushman, you can write ADVM01. Vivek, you can say VLVM01. Shontu, you can say SSVM01. That means the name has to be unique, because this will be your host name in the network. The name that you are providing here, that is the identity of the VM, and at the same name it will be the host name. It will be the host name. Region is basically where your virtual machine is physically going to get created. That means the data center location. Leave it default, or you can select Central India. If at all you want to select, then select Central India. And the people who are using a paid account, they should select the location that I am selecting, not Central India. Fine. Or else for the shared account you can leave it as it is, or you can select Central India. And for all free account holder, you should use Central India as your location. Okay, Central India as your location. Paid account, not Central India. Sorry, not Central US.
So for this shared one, like Central India or US?
Shared account, can you mute please? জহুরুল, সংকেত, লগ ইন করেছো, ইয়েটা তো সরাও, ক্যামেরাটা বন্ধ করো। Okay, for the shared account, leave it as it is, or you can select Central India. Leave it is as it is, or you can select Central India. You can select Central India. From the drop down, here type India, and it will show you Pacific Central India, and you can select Central India. Okay. Now in the availability option, leave it as it is, means it will be no infrastructure redundancy required. It has to be no infrastructure redundancy required. Security type will be standard. We'll be explaining this thing later on, because we have a couple of practical on this part. There I need to once first explain, and then we'll do the practical part. And so for the image is concerned, I told we want to take a Windows VM. We want to take a Windows VM. See, I have no access over the hardware component of the virtual machine. And that is the reason Azure, they provide me image, and the operating system disk actually gets created from the image name that we select. It's a quite a big list of image name you can find out from here. If you find the appropriate image name from here that you are going to use, then it is well and good. But if you are not getting the appropriate image name, then you can go to see all images. See all images. See all images will take you to the marketplace. Marketplace is basically the place where the Microsoft and Microsoft vendor, they provide their image, and each image they have their own cost. Fine. Now accordingly, the vendor and the image that will be selected, they will be charged. The cost will be defined. Anyhow, this one, for the free one, will not be charged. So we'll go for the Windows Server, and in the drop down, we'll be selecting something Windows 2012 R2. Now let me tell you why we are selecting Windows 2012 R2, even though the latest one is Windows 2022. They are quite resource hungry, and we are actually going to save some resource. So I'll be searching for Windows Server 2012 R2 data center. Now just have a look. I have Windows 2012 R2 data center, but after R2 data center, in some of the image it is written as ZH-CN. For God's sake, don't select this one, because it will be some Chinese language and you will not understand. Instead, you can select this one. The small DIX. Fine, you can select the small DIX, Windows Server 2012 R2 data center small DIX. Select this one. Okay, so I have selected the image, means in my virtual machine as an operating system, I will have Windows 2012 data center, and the size of the hard disk, which is automatically defined as 32 GB. That is the size of the hard disk that got automatically defined. Small disk means 32 GB. Otherwise, the disk size that gets controlled based on the operating system and the hardware that we are selecting. We have not yet selected the hardware. Let me tell you, we have not yet selected the hardware. Now, what does this Gen 1 or Gen 2 means? Gen 1 means this is mainly the BIOS base. This is the BIOS base. And Gen 2 is UEFI based. BIOS based and UEFI based. So we are going by an image which is built based on BIOS base. Now, obviously, the architecture will be 64 because on Linux platform, we only use 64-bit architecture. We only use 64-bit architecture. Now, here comes the hardware configuration setting. Here comes the hardware configuration setting. How many virtual CPU and how much memory that you are expecting. Now each of the model B, A, then you have F, then H, they have different kind of physical processor, different kind of physical processor. In some you are having Honeywell or processor, in some AMD processor. So for that actually you have to come here and go to the details. You have to go to the details, you actually require to go to the details. You can go to the details and from there you can select which series what. For example, A series is being considered as a general purpose base suited for the entry level workload for the purpose of development and testing. E series for high memory need, the machine where you have a very high amount of memory need, you can go for the E series. Fine. E series V4, E series V5. Then you have the D series. D series is basically the general purpose. This is third generation D family size. Third generation means definitely some of the processor they are using, which is the third generation. The second generation D family size. In fact, you can actually go to azure.microsoft.com in order to search for in which series what processor been used, what are the make of the processor. Even if it is the same processor, then the other features of the processor, which are the features they have been activated or not, that you can find out from directly azure.microsoft.com. Anyhow, I'll be selecting B1S. I'll be selecting B1S, or I can select B1MS. For the paid account holder, select B1S, and for the free account holder, select B1MS. For the free account holder, select or shared account holder, select B1MS. The difference here is both are having one virtual CPU, but B1MS is having 1 gig of memory and B1MS is having 2 gig of memory. Okay, 2 gig of memory. This M means extra memory. M stands for extra memory. Wherever you will find the M is written, that means in the normal whatever memory it will provide, it will be just the double of the normal memory. Just have a look here. B2S 2 CPU with 4 gig of memory. B2MS the same 2 CPU with 8 gig of memory. Anyhow, we'll be going by B1S or B1MS. Don't select anything other than B1S or B1MS. Username, your own name will be the username. Pratim. Password has to be of minimum 12 character and must meet the complexity. This is the administrator password. This person will be considered as the administrator. because the name administrator or root, that is not allowed, that is not allowed, and hence you need to give a name. Better you use your own name and then set the password. Then in the inbound port rule, you do not have to do anything. It will automatically select that RDP is allowed over the network. RDP is allowed over the network. In licensing, we'll go by the license being provided by Azure because we do not have any Windows license with us. So we'll come here, click over review and create. Fine. It will take a little moment for creating the virtual machine. Hardly what happened, why validation failed, what information I have not provided. I have provided all information, then why this funny error has appeared? You know, here you cannot use the username as a root or administrator, and that's why it is preferable to use your own name. So validation is passed, click on create and wait for the virtual machine to get created. This is the cost of this virtual machine per hour, and in between let me come from the washroom. ডেবিট কার্ড যদি হয় 75 টাকা প্লাস জিএসটি কাটবে, আর ক্রেডিট কার্ড হলে 2 টাকা কাটে। ক্রেডিট কার্ড দিয়ে এবং শিওর শট হয়েও যায়, ডেবিট কার্ড একটু নাটক করে। Chalo guys, my machine is ready and I hope your machine is also parallelly ready. हर किसी का मशीन रेडी हो गया है ना?
In process, sir.
ठीक है, लेट्स वेट अ लिटिल बिट। मेरे को कंफर्म करना कैसे मशीन बन जाएगा। यहाँ पे आना, ठीक है, पिक्चर को उठाना, जहाँ पे पब्लिक आईपी दिखाएगा फोटो उठाना और ग्रुप में भेज देना। एज्योर का जो अपना ग्रुप है भेजो, और जिसके पास ग्रुप का एक्सेस है नहीं वो सीधा मेरे को डायरेक्टली भेजो। Now let us see, as a part of the VM deployment, ठीक है, as a part of the VM deployment, what are the resources that got created? ठीक है, as a part of the VM deployment, what are the resources that actually got created? So where from we will get that information? Best place where from you can get the information is your resource group. The best place where from you can get this information is your resource group. You know what name you have provided to your VM, because especially the person who are using the shared account, they actually required to search those information based on the name that they have provided. But only one thing they will face common is the name of the network. Only the name of the network will be common for all 3 or 4 person who are actually using the shared account. But apart from that, all other resources, they will have a unique name. Just have a look. Click on the resource group name. Here in the VM management blade, you will have the resource group. So click over here, come to the resource group, and there you can see it has started with the name of the virtual network. You can see the type. You can see the type. So this resource is representing the network where the VM has been placed. This is your VM that you have created. I told that from my local system, I am going to access the virtual machine. So quite obvious, the virtual machine need to have a public IP address, and hence this is the public IP address. See, it is actually an IP address, but it is having a named identity. The IP address that we have seen here, it is having a named identity, so it will be identified with the name VM01-IP. Then, in order to protect my system from an unwanted access, a security group also got created, which controls the movement of the traffic to the virtual machine. Next, since my machine is a part of a network, hence this is the network interface card. Obviously, the virtual network interface card over which this public IP has been provided, that also got created. And last in the list is the disk. So what kind of disk is this one? This is mainly the OS disks. This is mainly the OS disks. The OS disks where the operating system got installed from the image that we have selected. We have selected Windows 2012 R2 data center, and hence this OS disk is having that particular operating system. Okay, if you want, you can go back to your VM, come to home, and from there VM, and then see what public IP address that you are having. Copy that public IP address. It will be appearing under the overview section of your VM. Fine. It will be appearing over the overview section of your VM. Then select this public IP address, select this one, and then you can click over run and then type mstsc. Since it is a Windows machine, the remote desktop connection will open there. Paste the IP address, click, asking for the username password. You know what username and password that you have provided, so use that username and the password. Okay, I have typed a wrong password. I think this time I have typed the password correctly. So it's RDP. RDP means It is a secure login, and the security has been provided through TLS encryption. So this is the certificate they have provided. This certificate will be used for building up the secure communication channel between this VM and my system. Click over yes, and here you can see the way normally in our data center we get access to the VM been created in the data center server. It is the actual same way we have get access to the virtual machine in Azure. No, this is not the task that we'll be doing. We have already done this one in our previous class. We have already aware of how to create a virtual machine and how to log into the virtual machine. If it is a Windows, using RDP, and if it is a Linux, then using SSH, right? Today I am actually going to show you, in case I want to make some change into the default hardware setup. For example, when a VM gets created, the default hardware setup says it will have one disk that will be considered as the operating system disk. It will have one NIC through which it will be connected to the local network as well as in internet, because I have associated the public IP address with that NIC. Now if I want to make some change here, if I want to make some change here, because apart from these two, another change can be changing the entire configuration setting. Another change can be changing the entire configuration setting. For example, currently I am having one virtual CPU and 1 gig of memory, and I want to increase the number of virtual CPU or increase the amount of memory. Then I can make a change by going to the size. By going to the size, go to the size. No, I'm not going to make it, but just want to show you. Just want to show you. Here you will have the choice. In fact, the VM that I have selected, that is the lowermost configuration setting been ever provided by Azure platform. So now if I make any change, that will be actually considered as a scale up. Any change that I will be doing now, that will be considered as a scale up. So I can go for DS1 V2 having 1 gig of memory and 3.5 gig of RAM. And not only that, here the processor is much more powerful than the processor that has been used in B series. Fine, I can go for B2S where the number of virtual CPU and amount of memory can also be changed. Fine, I'm not doing, but I'm just telling that this is the way you can scale up, or this is the way you can scale down. You can scale up or you can scale down. Now, I'm not going to make any change in the size. Rather, I just want to show you that I need to attach one more NIC into the VM. You may ask, sir, why you require one additional NIC to the VM? Fine, there can be 1001 answer. Maybe I want to set teaming concept on my virtual machine. So if the service has been provided by the virtual machine for the internal client, by any chance, I just want to increase the throughput. I just want to increase the throughput. And throughput can be only increased if instead of a single NIC, the throughput is going or coming through multiple NIC. So that may be one of the reason. So I can set up teaming. That's a concept of the operating system level that we are not going to discuss how to set teaming, because Linux they have their own way of setting up teaming and Windows they have their own way of setting up the teaming. That's basically part of the Linux administration or Windows administration. But for that you need multiple NIC. So how to add additional NIC with the existing VM, irrespective of whether that is Linux or Windows. Come to home. Anything that you will be doing, please return back to the home. Please return back to the home. And then in the global search window, type NIC. type NIC, and under the service section you see it is showing network interface. It is showing network interface. Click on network interface. It will show you the name of the existing network interface, the name of the existing network interface which is been associated with your virtual machine, right? There, click on create. Click on create. As usual, this resource also need to be kept inside the same resource group. Why? Because I'll be associating this NIC with my existing VM. So in future, if the VM doesn't have any existence, so I also don't require any existence of this component, because all these components are chargeable. So if I don't have the VM to which the NIC has been added, so what I will do with that NIC unnecessary. Hence, select the same resource group. Select the same resource group. Select the same resource group, the resource group you had selected at the time of VM creation. Give an identity to your NIC. VM01-NIC2. Some meaningful identity, so that later on you can identify for which VM and what is the number of NIC. Next come the region, the most important part. If your VM is in North Central US, your NIC also has to be in North Central US. If your VM is in Central India, then NIC also has to be in Central India. You cannot have your VM in Kolkata, but the NIC is in London. Just think it physically. Is it feasible that your physical machine is in Kolkata, but your NIC somebody has purchased in London? So can that NIC be connected to your machine which is in Kolkata? So the logic is something like that. So it has to be in the same geographical location. It has to be in the same geographical location. And not only that, there is one more criteria. The virtual network, it has to be in the same network where your virtual machine is existing. It will be the same virtual network where your machine is existing. So it is RG01 VNet. That means the VM, the network which got created automatically at the time of VM creation. And it has to be also in the same subnet. Don't worry, I will cover up the subnet part later on when we will start the network management part. There I will cover up the concept of IP address, IPv4 IP address, IPv6 IP address. Even elaborately we will discuss about the concept of subnet and subnetting also. Fine, we will have an extra class for that one. But
Sir, I have a few questions. Like
yes,
सर सर आप पहले बताइए कि सर ये जो हम एनआईसी ऐड कर रहे हैं ये जो हम लोग प्रीवियसली जो वीएम बनाए थे इसी में ही ऐड कर रहे हैं राइट?
नहीं, पहले एनआईसी को बनाएंगे, उसके बाद इसको
हाँ,
हम एनआईसी के मशीन के साथ ऐड करेंगे.
मशीन के साथ ऐड करेंगे जो प्रीवियसली हम लोग बनाए थे उसी में ही ऐड करेंगे.
करेक्ट, एब्सोल्युटली राइट.
अच्छा सर इसका क्यों रिक्वायरमेंट क्या पड़ रही है लाइक कि क्यों हम ऐड कर रहे हैं
आप
इसको?
क्लास में नहीं थे क्या?
यस सर क्लास में थे. कैन यू प्लीज रिपीट?
आप क्लास में नहीं थे?
यस सर
मैंने
थे
एक
सर.
बार नहीं, कम से कम 3 बार रिपीट किए थे. तीन बार. अब इस बार हम नहीं बोलेंगे, आपका आंसर आपको मिलेगा, बट समवन एल्स हैज टू आंसर. लेट्स सी what answer they provide. Whose question was this one? Shantu.
माइन सर. यस सर.
Yes. Let me see whether the other people are. Yes, Chandrasekhar, please.
सर आपने बोला कि अगर हमको समझ लो प्राइवेट अपने किसी ऑफिस के या किसी और से हाई थ्रूपुट में पैरेलली कनेक्शन रखना है, तो इन दैट केस सिंगल एनआईसी may not provide that feature. So
Correct.
if we had additional NIC, then this can be achieved. This is one kind of
And at the
scenario.
same time, I have also used one particular term. What was that term?
Teaming, sir.
Exactly,
Teaming, yeah.
teaming. Teaming is basically an universal concept, which logically bind multiple physical NIC together so that you can get the option of the way you have configured accordingly. Either you will get high throughput or you can get fault tolerance. So here I don't require fault tolerance because the infrastructure itself is fault tolerant. So I at the max can have 2 NIC in case I need extra throughput. So if one NIC is capable to provide you a communication speed say of 1 Gbps, then together 2 NIC from the same system will give you the throughput of 2 Gbps. But for that you need to enable teaming. So how to enable teaming, that's basically a part of the system administration. If you are a Windows administrator, then you will be aware of how to set teaming, and if you are a Linux administrator, then also you will be aware of how to set teaming in the NIC. That's not my lookout. My lookout is the network, sorry, system administrator has told I want to set team in concept, so please provide me one additional NIC. So I'm creating an additional NIC which later on I'll be added to the existing VM. Clear, Shantu?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Fine. So let's continue. And now it has to be on the same subnet. Fine, it has to be on same subnet, or it may be on a different subnet also, but has to be on the same network. देखो, I told you one reason why I need to NIC. क्या बोले? अगर मेरे को ज्यादा थ्रूपुट चाहिए, एक कॉन्सेप्ट है मल्टी होमिंग, पता है ना मल्टी होमिंग कॉन्सेप्ट? वैसे तो मल्टी होमिंग कॉन्सेप्ट का मतलब हम एक साथ दो दो अलग अलग नेटवर्क में रह सकते हैं. कैसे? या मल्टी होमिंग कैसे किया जाता है, ये देखो. इधर एक नेटवर्क है, ठीक है, इधर एक नेटवर्क है, और फिर इधर भी एक नेटवर्क है. दो अलग अलग नेटवर्क, बिल्कुल ही अलग अलग नेटवर्क. बोथ ऑफ देम आर टू डिफरेंट नेटवर्क. अभी मेरे को एक मशीन चाहिए that can serve parallelly both the network without having a router. Without having a router, it can serve both the network. Yeah, both the subnet. It is one subnet, this is one subnet. It's a portion of the network that's called a subnetwork. From the same network, for minimizing the wastage of the IP address, I have subdivided them into two subsections. So this is one subnet, we refer to as subnet 1. This is subnet 1, and this is subnet 2. Fine, this one is subnet 2. Even though they have been derived from the same network, but as because they have been subnetted, this is the primary concept of networking. Even if you don't know, don't worry, I will cover up this one in our network section. But they will be treated all together as two different network. And in order to the network to get interconnected, I need a router. I need a router. So if I keep one machine here and I want the users of the other network also need to have access this one, I need to create a virtual router, and through virtual router only from the subnet 2 user can access the VM that is been kept in subnet 1. But there is one alternate. If I have one machine, this is one VM having two different NIC. One NIC is connected on subnet 1 and another NIC is connected on subnet 2. And since both the NIC, they will have the subnet specific IP address. So the same service can be obtained parallelly by both the subnets. If subnet 1 is trying to have the access, they will use the subnet 1 specific IP address, and if it is coming from the subnet 2, then they will use the subnet 2 specific IP address. They will have subnet 2 specific IP address. Fine. That means I can have two NIC in a system. Number one, if I want to have a high throughput by implementing a concept called teaming, or else I can still have two NIC if I want to keep my system connected into two different home called multi-home. If I want a multi-home system, then also I need two NIC. Okay. Now here I cannot show you multi-home because I don't have two subnet, but still you can have your subnet list coming from here. If you have multiple subnet been taken from the same network, then you will have the subnet list here, and you from the drop down select the subnet. Now depending upon how you have configured your network, if it is a pure IPv4 network, then you can get an IPv4 IP address, and if that one is a IPv4 cum IPv6 network, then you can select IPv4 and IPv6. So the selection will be based on how the network has been set. Now here we have not set the network manually, and the default setup provide me only IPv4 because that is the most popular kind of IP address being used in the LAN setup. Please remember, we are actually working in a LAN which is not physically available into my on-premises environment, but logically it is available in cloud. It is in cloud, but it is a LAN. It is a LAN. So this network is nothing but a LAN that has been created in the cloud. Okay, and there generally IPv4 IP address get used, so it is IPv4. Now when a system is get connected to the network through an NIC, it requires an IP address. So how the IP address can be assigned? There are two different ways the IP can be assigned. One, you can assign them manually. Fine. If you assign them manually, then that IP address is actually referred to as static IP. Why? Because if you are on, that is yours. If you are off, still that is yours. That is not getting used by somebody else. But alternate is you can automatically assign the IP address. And for that, we use a protocol called Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, or DHCP. All this I will cover into our network section. So in that case, you can obtain an IP address dynamically. So you select what you need, a dynamic IP or an IP address, static IP. If you say static, then you have to define the IP address. And obviously that IP address has to be an IP address of the subnet. You cannot say I am in the 172 subnet but my IP address will be of 192. Sorry, that is not possible. If you are in 172 subnet, then your IP address also has to start with 172. Okay, so let me keep it dynamic. I don't mind. Let me keep it dynamic. And now,
sir, is there any pricing difference on static and dynamic IP?
Pardon?
Is there any pricing difference?
No,
on static
both
or
are
dynamic?
same. Both are same.
Okay,
Both
sir.
are same. Only difference is in case of dynamic, you will be charged when the machine is on, and in case of static, you will be charged for 24 hours. Because in case of dynamic, when your system is on, then only your system require an IP address, and the Azure platform will assign that IP address to you. But instead of static, as because it has been fixed for you, so whether you are on or you are off hardly matters. That IP is always reserved for you.
Understand, sir.
But the cost of IP is not that much. The cost of IP is not that much. Daily, hardly it is in Indian currency 1 rupees. So it's not that high. And almost same for both private and public IP. Okay, so review and create. পোর্টগুলো হচ্ছে ফর সার্ভিস। আমি যখনই নেটওয়ার্কে কোনো সার্ভিস ইনস্টল করি, সার্ভিসগুলো যখন তার ক্লায়েন্টের সঙ্গে ইন্টারাক্ট করে, ফর দ্যাট দে নিড এ লজিক্যাল পাথ, অ্যান্ড দ্যাট ইজ বিন ডিফাইন্ড বাই দ্য পোর্ট। আর এই যে বাইন্ডিং যেটা হচ্ছে, দ্য সার্ভিস, দ্য পোর্ট অ্যান্ড দ্য আইপি অ্যাড্রেস, টেকনিক্যালি এটাকে বলে সকেট। Okay, my
Hello.
NIC is ready.
Sir, if I select static IP, like then subnet cannot be like default, right?
If you select static IP, then you have to select one IP address from your network only.
Yes.
That was the thing I was telling, that if you are having your network of 172, here at least when you are manually assigning the IP, you cannot select it from 192. It has to be from 172. And now, as because we are not at all aware what range of IP address they have provided, etc., etc., so better you keep it dynamic, at least now. Later on, when the networking part will be covered, you can fill in the blanks, that whether it's a dynamic or static, and if it is static, then how to find out the IP address of the current network setup, so that I can select one IP address from there. Okay. Now, how to attach? Go to the NIC, and then go to IP configuration, and then go to IP config, no, sorry, IP configuration. Go to IP configuration, you can see it has automatically assigned the dynamic IP. Fine. Then you will find in the NIC there is no provision for selecting the name of the VM to whom it can be associated. See, observe it minutely. If you go to the network interface, here is the new NIC that you have created. Fine. Come down here. In the overview page, it is not showing you any provision for attaching this NIC with a VM. Then you go to IP configuration. In IP configuration also, there is no provision for attaching this VM with this NIC with a VM. Even if you go to the individual configuration setting, this is an individual configuration setting over the NIC. There also, it is giving you the provision that if you have a public IP, then you can attach this public IP with this NIC, but nowhere it is giving you the option through which you can associate this NIC with a VM. Because NIC need to be attached through the VM. You cannot attach a VM through an NIC. Please remember, NIC need to be attached through the VM. You cannot attach a VM through an NIC. So it is mainly a VM configuration part. Extra configuration setting of the VM. In one part, it is an additional NIC attachment. An additional NIC attachment. So if you go to the virtual machine, the VM you have created, go there. So here I can see the VM. The VM is currently running. The status is showing it is running. And we have already logged in there. We have done the experiment by login. Fine. Now, if I want to attach an NIC, additional NIC into the VM, go to the settings section and from there go to networking. And in networking, you see it is giving you the provision for attaching a new network interface. But unfortunately, it is grayed out. Fine. It is because the virtual machines being provided by Azure platform, they, at least for the NIC, are not hot swappable. In a real life scenario, when you are working on a server environment, especially on a data center environment, memory, processor, NIC and hard disks, these are the four components which are hot swappable. Hot swappable means even though the system is running, you can attach or detach these interfaces. That actually been provided, I mean the support has actually been provided by the hardware component, is the hardware setup. There are some sort of jumpers available. You need to remove that jumper, and if you remove that jumper from the system, then on that port power supply get disabled. Then you attach the component that you want to associate with your machine, then return back the jumper, the newly attached component become active. But here I don't have the control over the physical hardware, and as a result, in a running VM I cannot attach the NIC. In the running VM I cannot attach the NIC. You remember when we were actually discussing the pros and cons of the different services? Cloud computing usually provides us three services: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And the limitation of the infrastructure as a service was, if I really want a control over the hardware, I cannot. For example, this one. Here I need the control over the hardware, but I am not having that. So what is the alternate? The alternate is power off the system from Azure, not from the waste level. You know what is the difference between when I shut down a system? When I say shut down the system, you see, I say shut down the system. I'm shutting down the system. So the VM is no more running. Fine. The VM is no more running. It will show stopped. Wait. It takes a little bit of time to understand, but it will display stopped. It will display stopped. And if I shut down the system from this icon, you have a stop icon in the overview window. You can see the status got changed. The status got changed. Now it is stopped. At the same time, you also have a stop icon here. So what is the difference between when we shut down the operating system from the waste level and we shut down the system from the stop button being provided on the platform? What is the difference? Observe what it is telling now. What is it telling now? So my OS is not running, correct? So ideally, I should be able to attach additional component, and let us see whether it is allowing me to do so. Let us see whether it is allowing me to do so. Yes, it is. But still, my question remains the same. My question will remain same. My question will remain same, that what is the difference between when I shut down a VM and when I stop a VM? Just have a look what is happening now. I have stopped the VM. It is already been stopped. Now it is telling updating. So what update it is doing? Just have a look. Just have a look what it tells. You can do it for your machine also. Do it parallelly. And now see what it has told. Deallocated. That means it has released the hardware component. Except the hard disks, nothing will be charged. For the VM, it is a chargeable component. The public IP, that is a chargeable component. The NIC is a chargeable component. The IP address that have been associated with the NIC, they are all chargeable. Hard disk is also chargeable. But when I say stop, it deallocate everything. That means it releases all the hardware component which are chargeable except the hard disks. So I'll be charged only for the hard disks, even though the hard disks are actually charged on monthly basis. And if you are using a partial portion of the month, then the price will be applied on pro rata basis. Fine. But here, if you keep it stopped, for the other four components, there will be not a single penny of charge. Even if you can, if you want, you can directly stop the VM from here. Then it will send a shutdown signal to your VM. The VM will first get shut down, and then the process of deallocation will start. Whether you are logging to the VM and then running shutdown, or you are clicking here stop, the VM at any cost is going to get shut down. Okay, now go back to network and then attach the network interface. You will find the network interface name here. I will have only one because the single account, single-handed controlled account. But people who are actually using the share account, 4 people are sharing, so you will get 4 NIC names. So select the appropriate NIC that you have selected for your machine. Select the name and then click on OK. তুমি যদি শাটডাউন করো বাট নট স্টপ ফ্রম আউটসাইড, সবকটা কম্পোনেন্টের জন্য তোমার মাস গেলে বিল আসবে। তুমি সারা মাস মেশিনই চালালে না, শুধু পুরো মেশিনটার জন্য তোমাকে বিল পে করতে হবে। Okay, so NIC has been attached. You can see this is one NIC and this is the second NIC, the first NIC and second NIC. Fine. Now by default the NIC will not provide you any kind of security because there are a lot of other network related configuration setting that need to be done in order to secure this NIC from unwanted access. That we will show you later on, but this is the way the NIC that get attached. And now if I say start, So this is the public IP address. I got disconnected. Let me reconnect myself. Connect. Okay. You can verify from here. Since this is a Windows machine, right click on the start menu, go to run, and there you can type ncpa.cpl, and it will show you you are having 2NIC. Fine. 2NIC. This one was having an IP address 10.0.0.4. Fine. And the other one is also been assigned an IP address, and it is telling DSCP enabled means IP got assigned automatically, and as because it is also connected in the same network, so it has achieved the next IP. It has received the next IP, at least in my case, but you can check for your case what is the IP address that you have received.
It is the same IP address, sir.
Pardon?
IP address is appeared on our my Windows system. It's 10.0.0.4 and 10.0.0.5.
Fine, no issue. It's absolutely okay. No issue. Next component that I can associate with the VM is an additional disk. Yes. The next component that I can attach with a VM is an additional disk. Actually, as per Microsoft, at the time of creating the virtual machine, the disks that we get, that is actually referred to as an OS disks. Why? Because the operating system get installed over that disks. The image that you have selected, you can select Windows, you can select Linux, whatever may be the operating system that you have selected, the disks actually having that OS image, and hence that is been referred to as OS disks. Microsoft doesn't recommend to use the OS disks to hold data. Fine. See, this is a raw server. Doesn't been provided any kind of role. For example, it is not providing any kind of service to the network. Whether it's a Windows or Linux, it's just a simple installed server. But if you want to use this server over the network, you need to assign some role. For example, you may configure your system to provide you the function of a web server, the function of a file server, function of X server, Y server, Z server, database server, whatever it may be. So they are basically being considered as the role for the server. And every application service that deal with data, every application service that deal with data, So Microsoft recommend that if you want to assign any role to your server, then for those application you should have a separate disk which will be treated as a dedicated data disk. You should keep the initial hard disk dedicated for the operating system only. The application and data should not be kept inside the waste disks. So that is the primary reason why I need to attach additional disks. But before I go and show you that how we can attach an additional disk, let me take you through the machine that currently how many type of disks machine is having.
Sir, this is Amit. Can I ask you something?
Sure, Amit, please.
Yeah. Okay. So this is about the previous task, right? About the NIC card. I was just wondering, like, I have added this NIC, and I follow the steps. When I just additionally I went ahead and checked this NSG, that network group, security group, right? I can see that this it has only one NIC. It doesn't have the second NIC.
No,
So do you need to associate?
I told you that it is just an NIC, but it is not yet been associated with the security group, or no other further security related configuration has been done there. That
Okay.
every configuration setting I will show you when I will cover up the network
Network.
setup.
Understand.
Because before
Okay.
that, yes, before that you need to know what is an NSG, what are the kind of security components that the virtual network that provide. So accordingly you can associate the NIC with them. But here
Noted.
in
Yeah,
this
okay.
case I have just shown you that the way the additional components can be attached.
Okay, noted. Understand. I just out of curiosity asked you.
No,
Okay.
definitely. You should not keep any doubt. You should
Okay.
blindly ask me. Don't get hesitate that no. If I ask, then what should be the impact? Don't think about that one. If you
Okay.
have any
Yeah.
doubt,
Thank you.
get your doubt clarified instantaneously. At the very day one of the class, I told that if you have any doubt, stop me, ask me, and I will answer. Then I will continue. If required, I will spend 2 extra days for that one. That I am supposed to complete the entire syllabus within this many numbers of days. But if required, I will ready to spend 2 more days. But I don't want that I will run after the time. No. The time is becoming over. So by at hook and crook, I have to complete the syllabus. No, we don't do it in AEM like that.
Yeah, I know, sir. Thank
If
you,
I
sir.
say I will complete the entire course by 4 months, and if it takes 4.5 months, still I'm happy, because at the end of 4.5 months I will get all the satisfied client, satisfied student, not dissatisfied student.
Noted, sir.
Okay, so I
Okay, sir.
hope
Thank you.
your doubt got clarified.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay.
very much. Yes,
Now,
thank you.
before I jump to the process of attaching additional disk, first let me go inside the virtual machine and find out, is it really in one disk that is being associated with the operating system, or by default the platform associate multiple disks with the operating system. So here I am, and that was the reason behind why we have chosen Windows, because Windows give us a graphical view, and it is quite easy to understand everything when you get something via graphics. Same thing happens in Linux also, but as because people are not that familiar with the Linux platform, so intentionally I have chosen Windows machine, at least to make you understand. But please remember, whatever I am telling for Windows, they are even true for the Linux platform also. So just open disk management. Just open disk management in the Windows platform. Right click over the এটা পাবো কি করে, নইলে তুমি যদি ভিএমটাকে চালু না করো আমার এই ভিএম লগইনটা হবে? মেশিন বন্ধ অথচ আমি লগইন করে ফেললাম, আমি ভগবান নাকি? right click, and then go to disk management. Go to disk management. Start menu, then run. হ্যাঁ ভিএম এর ভিতরেই স্টার্ট মেনুতে রাইট ক্লিক করে ডিস্ক ম্যানেজমেন্ট। You were actually supposed to see only one disk 0, but can you see it is displaying 2 disks? You were supposed to view only one disk. You have selected small disks. Small disk means it is round about 32 GB, so it is showing you 30 GB. It's okay. It's a matter of that calculation, 1000 or 1024. If you take 1024, then it becomes 30 GB, and if you do the calculation using 1000, then it will be 32 GB. So fine, no issue. So this is the disk. This is actually referred to the operating system disk, and the entire disk is filled up with operating system. Whether the operating system is that big or not, that's different issue. But apart from the system reserved, the rest, they are actually been part of the C drive of the operating system. But along with that, you can see one additional disk is also getting displayed here. An additional disk is also getting displayed here, but it was not getting displayed in our total resource list. You remember when we have actually gone through the total resource list in our resource group, this disk was actually not getting reflected there. This disk was not getting reflected there, but when you logged into the system and through your disk management utility, when you see the disk, you can see one additional disk of minimum 4 GB size. Normally this disk is actually used for temporarily storing the data. Mainly the page files are actually get created here. In all sense, it is a temporary disk, and if you go inside the D drive, the very first thing you will find, it is written there. You just go there and you will find it is written there, data loss warning readme. Anything that you are going to keep here, they are subject to get lost. You know, this is a disk that has been created from the SSD of the physical machine. You know, in the Azure platform, in order to provide you the disk support, they create hard disks, logical hard disks, rather I should say virtual hard disks, VHD files, and those VHD files get attached with your virtual machine. It is mainly the concept of the virtualization. In virtualization, the hypervisor application, when creates a virtual machine, it is nothing but a file for the physical machine. And all virtual disks which are been associated with the virtual machine, they are also a special file with respect to the physical machine. They are actually referred to as block file. This is a term being used in Linux platform. Block file basically referred to the virtual hard disk file, means the file which is representing a disk. So here in this platform, in Azure platform, they are basically VHDs, means virtual hard disks. Now these virtual hard disks will give you that particular feature based on physical disks which got created. See, what is the concept of virtualization? The concept of virtualization says the hypervisor application will create a virtual instance of the same physical component, and then all those virtual instances will be combined together to provide you a machine that we refer to as a virtual machine. So if my virtual hard disk is getting created over a magnetic disk, the type of behavior that I will get, if the same virtual disk is getting created over an SSD, will it provide the same behavior? Definitely not, because the SSDs provide much more faster IO in comparison to the HDD, and hence for the virtual hard disks, please remember, hence for the virtual hard disks. Now temporary disk, in true sense, it is a disk been created on the SSD, been associated with the physical machine where the virtual machine has been created on Azure data center. In Azure data center, you have physical machine, and on that physical machine, Azure platform is helping you to create a virtual machine, right? And when the virtual machine got created, along with the virtual machine, a virtual disk also got created. And depending upon your setup, actually we have not selected anything in the disk part. We have not selected anything from the disk part. We have only go by the configuration setting of the basic part. And the rest, I have defined all default. And default says the disks are going to get created from SSD. The SSD that is being associated with my physical machine, the virtual disks are actually getting created on the SSD. I will cover up that part on our next class. The entire disk part I will cover up in the next class, because it is a very big topic. Managing the disk on virtual machine is a big topic. Fine. But just try to understand the concept. We have not selected anything, so it has gone by default. But when I see the machine, I can see it is already having 2 disks. One disk that is getting displayed in my list of hardware in the resource group, but the other disk is not getting displayed because it is actually been used for the temporary storage purpose. It is actually been used for the temporary storage purpose. When I say temporary storage purpose, means it literally temporary storage. You can see what is the purpose, page file. So what does page file means? What is the concept of paging? Can anyone tell me in the group what is the concept of paging for operating system? What is the concept of paging in case of operating system? Can anyone tell me? Yes, Chandrasekhar.
So caching, if more memory required, then operating system may
Cache memory,
use
or you can
cache
say virtual
memory.
memory.
Virtual
Yes,
memory,
Amit.
yes.
Yes, Amit, tell me.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's almost similar to that. So it's just a swap file which actually gets assigned in case of
So
there is
you
a
are
memory
actually
crunch.
telling me in the Linux language, but you are 100% right. It's basically a swap location. It's basically a swapping location, and swapping location is nothing but an extended, I mean, it's a place in the hard disk. It's a place in the hard disk which the memory management subsystem basically uses as an extended part of your system memory.
Mm.
Fine. Your
But the
operating
yeah, but
systems, the kernel memory management subsystem utilizes this one as an extended part of your physical memory. What happens when you launch any program, the program that actually get launched in the form of page, and there are thousands of pages, they get loaded over the system memory. Okay, when you actually run an application, now this extra space that is been used for shifting all those pages of the running application, which are required but not get used by the operating system. Maybe there is a 1000 page for an application that got loaded into the system memory, but currently to keep the application running, the processor is using hardly 10 pages. So the remaining 990 pages, they are required, but currently not required by your processor. So to free up your system memory, these pages are actually been shifted into that hard disk location, which is considered by the memory management subsystem as an extended part of the system memory. But if required, those pages can be pulled from the hard disk to the RAM, and if not required, it can be pushed back to the hard disk. So this actually referred to as swap. So in a Linux language, that space is called a swap space, and a swap space plus the system memory that provide the virtual memory to the operating system. So here, this additional disk space is actually the swap space for the Windows operating system. My system is having 1 gig of physical memory, and this extra memory space is actually being used by the operating system kernel memory management subsystem as the swap space. So any application which are currently running, but hundreds of, I mean all the pages, 100% of the pages, they are not in used, those extra pages are have been pushed here. They are being pushed here, and physically the hard disk where the temporary storage gets created, that is directly associated with the machine. Let me tell you, physically the hard disk where the temporary storage got created, it is directly associated with the physical machine. They are actually being referred to as DAS, direct attached storage. Now why this information is important, why this information is important for us? This is not a DAS for the physical machine. Let me tell you, for me, both the disks are DAS, directly attached storage. But if you look it from the physical machine point of view, the operating system disk is not get created on a DAS. It doesn't get created on a DAS, rather it gets created on a SAN. Okay, it actually gets created on a SAN on background. I'm not talking about what I am seeing here, rather I'm telling you about the backend, that is an Azure platform. The waste disks, you know, the waste disks, that is actually a part of, guys, am I audible? Hello?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes,
Because I
sir.
am very afraid of the network issue, you know, I'm very afraid of the network issue.
Sir, your network already showing poor.
I
Again,
know
it's
that.
saying
I know that.
it is
Even
getting
my
better now.
VM connection got detached. You can see my VM connection got detached. Fair, no problem. So what I was telling, that the operating system disk, if you look it from the physical machine point of view, where the VM got created, it is not been created on the same hard disk that is directly attached with the physical machine. Rather, the SAN storage which is been attached with the physical machine, the waste disk got created there. But the temporary storage is got created directly over the SSD associated with the physical machine. So what is the impact? What is the impact? What is the impact? I keep something on D drive. I shut down my system. I start my system. I go to D drive. I will still find that one, even though that has been referred to as a temporary disks. Temporary disks, they temporarily hold data. But even after reboot, you can see the data. That means they are permanent. Then why they are being considered as temporary? Because by any chance, if the physical machine is getting changed, at what condition the physical machine get changed? At what condition the physical machine may get changed? You see, here is your virtual machine. And if you come down below, you remember there was something called redeploy. There is something called redeploy. When we apply redeploy, when we perform a resizing, then by any chance, if the virtual machine doesn't provide me the login provision, chance is there, maybe at the process of resizing, some internal issue has taken place on the physical machine, where from the virtual machine access has been provided. And hence, to resolve that problem, we generally redeploy the process, means rebuild the virtual machine once again. Rebuild the virtual machine once again. Now, the OS disk doesn't have any problem because it is not directly attached with the physical machine. It is a SAN storage, and the SAN storage is parallelly accessed by multiple physical machine. But the direct impact comes from the temporary disks. In a process of redeploy, they actually change the physical machine from one physical machine to another physical machine. The virtual machine get migrated. Fine. So the machine is getting migrated. It doesn't face any problem with the OS disks. But as because the temporary disks cannot be migrated, it is directly, it gets created on the directly attached storage device. So a new temporary disk that gets created in the new physical machine, and you will experience data loss. And that is the reason it has been told on the disk itself that you will experience data loss. So do not try to store anything there. Fine. Generally, the minimum size of the temporary storage is 4 GB. But there is a small calculation based on the size of the temporary disks, especially when you have more amount of system memory. Generally, it is just the double of your available memory space. That means in a machine where you have 8 gig of system memory, the temporary storage will be of 16 gig. You do not have to do anything. The size will get changed automatically. You do not have to do anything. The size will get changed automatically. And if you want to check, you can do it. And this will be the last practical session for today's class. Let's resize the VM into the next available model, into the next one. You have selected B1S or max to max B1MS, max to max B1MS. We'll go for B2S. We'll go for B2S. Fine. Under the settings, go to size. Under the setting, go to size. Fine. Go to size. And there B2S, where is B2S? Yes, here is B2S. And B2S is telling I will have 2 CPU and the amount of memory will be 4.
3.5.
No, it's 4.
It's 4, yeah.
4. That means if I log in, I will see the temporary disk size get changed from 4 to 8. Please resize. And I'll be very happy if I cannot log in. If it is of the same type, then you do not have to shut down. Yeah, temporary you will experience a downtime, but the machine will get started automatically. But if you completely change the hardware infrastructure, for example, the machine type you have taken that is originally having an Intel processor, now you are selecting a size which is having an AMD processor. That means it's a complete shift. Then the machine will not start automatically. After resizing, you have to manually start the VM. In any case, downtime is there, but if a complete shift, you will have more downtime. Why? Because we have to manually start the VM. Let's have a look. I will be the happiest person in the world if I am not able to log in. Then I can show you the practical implementation of redeploy. That was the main reason of redeploy. That after resizing, if you cannot
I could
log
able
in,
to log in just now without rebooting.
pardon?
I could able to log in now. So what I noticed is without shutting down the VM when I resize, right, the VM got disconnected, and now I need to turn it on. It was already running state, so I could able to do RDP. Yeah, I think you can also do RDP now.
As well, we are not that lucky. The
Okay.
platform has perfectly resized the VM, and out of 1,99,999 time, it is successful. It's a 0.000001% of failure, but still to withstand that failure, they have kept this option, redeploy. The redeploy option is only for that 0.000001%, but in a different machine. Considering there is a problem on this physical machine, so let me use another machine where the same VM will be redeployed. It will retain everything except the temporary disks. ধরো তোমার সামনে যে মেশিনটায় তুমি কাজ করছো, ভিএমটা সেখানে, কিছু করতে গিয়ে মেশিনটা ডিস্কে প্রবলেম আছে, চেঞ্জ করলে, করার পর মেশিন তো দেখাচ্ছে চালু হয়েছে, কিন্তু তুমি লগ ইন করতে পারছো না বিকজ অফ সাম ইন্টারনাল প্রবলেম অফ দ্য ফিজিক্যাল মেশিন। তুমি তখন কি করলো? ওটাকে মাইগ্রেট করে পাশের মেশিনটায় নিয়ে চলে গেলে। সেই কাজটাই এখানে হলো, সেটা এখানে বলছে রিডিপ্লয়। নাও জাস্ট হ্যাভ এ লুক, right click and then disk management, and see the size of the temporary disk. What is the size? Why it is 8 GB? Because my memory size is 4 GB and it is providing me the page file concept, means it is actually functioning as a swap space. In Linux language, that is referred to as swap space. So it is actually providing me the swap space. I show it in window because it is easier to find it out here. In Linux also you can do the same change. You will see the changes has take place in Linux system, but there everything you need to find out using the command. Okay. So guys, this is about how we can start attaching the components, how we can attach the component. Next day we will be starting with disk attachment. But before that, there is a little bit of theory about disks. I will cover up those theory. It will take around about half an hour time. There will be a document and will be sharing that document in the Google Classroom also along with the video. Fine. So that you do not have to take any note. You just concentrate on the practical part. So far it is concerned, I will try to supply you the note. In case there is no note, I will take the note running. In most of the case, I have a note, so you do not have to take the botheration taking the note, but definitely you should write down the steps. Nowhere in no note the steps are been mentioned. Okay, nowhere in no note the steps are been mentioned. So please remember that one. Okay, guys.
Okay, sir.
Please do not log out. Please do not log out. I would like to take you back to those old school days where I will perform literally a roll call. I will ask everyone by name and please say present. I will literally take you back to your old school days. But before that, let me stop the recording.